All right. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Good evening. Welcome to the Every Other Sunday Rooftops of America live stream. Hope you're all having a good night tonight. Joining me as my compatriot tonight is this Allagash Ski House Winter White Ale. Looks really good in the glass. Got that classic sort of weedy flavor. And figured it was pretty fitting since it's the last full weekend of winter. No, we'll have one more, but I won't see you guys until spring. How about that? So the last live stream for winter 2025, 2024 to 2025. Anyway, I hope everybody had a good last 2 weeks. Everything is going all right for you in your life, and that that things are going okay. So over the last couple of weeks, it's been interesting times for the Marthaler family, and things are continuing to go. Things are continuing to go. Let's put it that way. No change of plans in the big scheme of things. Most of my, like I've mentioned before, most of my high pointing plans for this year are up in the air. I've already sort of written off my plans to do Kansas in March, April timeframe. Maybe I can pick them back up though in May or July. June is right out. And I've also tried to figure out how to maybe redo a couple things that I've wanted to refilm in the Midwest. Because I figure I'm going to have to make a trip back to Wisconsin at some point, which means coming from Pennsylvania, I got to go through Ohio, Indiana. Probably won't be able to do Illinois unless I plan it smart and get that first weekend. But if I refilm Illinois, I sort of want to film it in the winter. And or maybe pick up Minnesota if I can manage that. I don't know if I'd get all three of them. I might visit all three, but I definitely won't be able to refilm all three. Not to what I want to refilm them as. So yeah, there's that. So high pointing plans. I'd be curious to know what your high pointing plans are for the summer. I know we've talked about this before. Folks going to the convention, looking for Whitney. I know people got stuff in for the lottery. Fingers crossed for you. That'll be good. You'll have good luck with it. I know it took us a couple years before mine hit, and last year was the lucky year. But and it was a great adventure. So it was worth the wait, and I was able to pretty much enjoy it like I sort of figured. And speaking of which, I've been going through the footage because California is finally back in my editing box. Well, actually, that makes it sound like Brett wasn't doing his job. Brett totally did his job and had it back to me, and I finally got around to it. So let's put it that way. So going back through all that and looking at it again and reliving those experiences is pretty cool. Hopefully you guys have seen, I put the updated version of Alabama out. I think it turned out all right. It was an interesting. It was. I wish I would have shot more with the drone. Is the one thing I kept coming when I was looking at Alabama, but then I realized that day we were up there filming. Flying the drone was rough. When we were flying it off of Chiaha Mountain, the wind was crazy. So it was really getting buffeted. And those minis, I'm flying the TGI Mini, 250 grams, 249 grams is not a whole lot. And that thing gets bullied by the wind a bit, especially when it's really kicking around. So looking back on it, I feel there's a couple things I would do again, but that ain't going to happen. Alabama is now officially in the closed column. But overall, I do think that particular episode is better than the first time out. The funny thing about it is, I was one of the first, when I originally did Alabama in 2018, I think. Like, when I redid the script this time around, I actually kept a lot of the material from the original one. Like, in previous refilms, I've rewritten like almost the entire thing and maybe a line or two keep crossover into the new material. But Alabama had a good structure, and it was just a matter of punching it out a little bit, fleshing it out, putting a little more uh, musculature on the bones, so to speak, telling a more comprehensive story. It also, when I was going through it and getting it, re-editing it, it um, ignited one of my things that I've always thought would be a really cool series. Um, I think it would be cool. I don't know if other people would. It might be way more boring for folks, but I've always been fascinated by the Civilian Conservation Corps. And Alabama Gia State Park has, that Civilian Conservation Corps presence. A lot of the places that we go to, there's that history there where the Civilian Conservation Corps really did help form some of these places. And it was really fascinating to dig back into those details and look at the impact that organization had during the Great Depression. And I feel like there is a really cool documentary. I know people have done it, but a really cool I know people have done it, but a really cool mini series, almost a Ken Burns style mini series on the Civilian Conservation Corps to be had. Like, I feel like it deserves more than 2 hours. You probably do it in a nice tight 4 episodes, like 8 hours total. You could probably have a really good Civilian Conservation Corps story across the United States and the impact that organization had in the places that we enjoy today. So it's another good idea that's back on the list. We'll see what happens. And it's been so it was nice to spark that idea. And like I said, Alabama, I really was impressed looking at the footage again on how well my friend Colin structured it, framed it. He's not a professional DP in any way, shape, or form, but he's helped me refilm Mississippi and he's helped me refilm Alabama. And he's probably going to be on the hook to refilm Georgia, maybe in spring break. If we head down to Nashville, I might run down and try to pick up Brass Town Paul and refilm Georgia, which, interestingly enough, Georgia actually makes the time limit that I've always set. Like, I want things to be longer than 23 minutes. Whereas Georgia comes in, I think it was around 25. But the sound on Georgia is terrible. The sound on Georgia was so rough that it's the one that really forced me to finally get off the shotgun mic. Georgia and New Jersey were the 2 episodes where I realized that I really needed to grow up and get better audio if I wanted to keep doing this. Because I was using a really good Rode shotgun mic, but it was picking up way too much ambient noise. And Georgia in particular suffered from a lot of traffic noise, which was fascinating. But there are parts in there. It was so frustrating. I still can remember very clearly my frustration in filming Georgia and having to deal with motorcycle traffic in particular. In that, I can't think of the forest right now around there, but there was just so much of it. and I'd have to try to wait and get an open spot and hope like hell that I could deliver the line in a good way. And since I was filming it all by myself, it was an incredibly time-consuming process, and it just kept getting more and more frustrating. And so had a if I would have been using lav mic at the time, that would have been minimized. So while most of Georgia, I'll probably add to it, but not a whole lot. And I say that now, knowing full well my tendency to dig and find stories. But I think I could take the Georgia script as is, just refilm it, and make a better product. Add a little drone footage in there, and Bob's your uncle, and there you go. You got a nice little package deal. So we'll see. Hopefully I can do that in April. So that will be as I try to cobble together something for to keep the High Point content coming through this year. That's the plan. Series is also the Rooftops of the Solar System. Final episode. Got to get it done. Got to get it across the finish line. That series turns 5 years old, which is insane to think about. In June? I think it's in June. When I filmed Mercury at, I can't think of the name of the rock field. Not Singing Rocks, but the other big one here in Pennsylvania. It's really cool if you ever get a chance. It's definitely worth seeing. And so I'm trying to figure out how to go about doing that. And I think, getting that finished and maybe even just going back there to sort of close the loop, and get Rooftops of the Solar System completely wrapped. Should be a big win. So that's where things are looking right now. California will probably be the next episode you guys see. Brand new episode, new content, good story, and I think it looks good. Everything I've seen, it was pretty well shot. And yeah, so hopefully I can have that out to you in April. I'd love to say the 1st of April, but we know me. Let's just say April is a time frame to get that out. And then Texas will come back up on the docket, and the new version of Texas will hopefully go out in May. Maybe June, depending on how Texas looks, actually. Because if Texas doesn't have everything I need, since I'm going back there in June to El Paso for my brother's graduation, I'll be able to actually do some pickups if I have to do some pickups. So that's where everything sort of stands right now, in Rooftops of America land. So we'll see. I'm going to keep on finding some solutions. And, I'm really hoping maybe in a couple months things will have settled a little bit. And maybe I can put Bora Peak back on the docket for August. Fingers crossed. We'll see. And if not, maybe if they settle a little later, I can go out in September, October timeframe and pick up some of the Great Plains stuff I've wanted to reshoot. Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, both Dakotas, like all those need to be redone. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. It's been challenging. So thanks for bearing with me as I muddle through this. And yeah, so let's see. A lot of stuff in the chat. You guys are going crazy. Okay. Pretzel, how are you? I'm good. Hanging in there. Hello, Bill. Thank you for being here. Hello, Eric. Glad you are here. Hello, Jess. Glad you are here as well. Besides Denali, would you have any info about? No, I wouldn't. I really haven't looked at the national park high points in any great detail other than the ones that are state high points. if I ever get around to looking at them, it's usually on a whim, but it doesn't stick. I don't retain it. So, traveling around, man. Thanks for being here. It's always a pleasure to see you around. Um, how many people were there for your winter visit? I'm assuming you meant for Charles Mountain. I've never visited Charles Mountain in the winter, but the 2 times I have been there. The first time I was there, it was, we saw one other group. We were the first ones on the summit the first time I was there. The second time I was there and we filmed it, saw a lot of people. It was fun. Yay for up north in Minnesota. Yay for the Arrowhead. Woo! I like that area. That is a fun, really cool area of Minnesota. I'm very keen on the Arrowhead. Once you get to Duluth and you go north, it's all just awesome. Minor Grapevine Telescope Boundary in Whitney. Very cool. I went to revisit Mount Davis today. Still plenty of snow. Was an adventure getting up there. My first time to Mount Davis was in the snow. And I actually, there was so much snow, I didn't know where the actual high point was. So the picture I have of me, what I thought was the highest point, was actually one of the placards where they had some information, but it was just covered with snow. So I just made an assumption like, here it is. I remember climbing up the tower when we were there, or I was there that time. That was just the me, that first time. And it was treacherous. Treacherous. This was in December of 2013? 2014? I just started this thing. So it was pretty early in the game. I want to say it was 2013. December of 2013. It was the first time I went to Davis. The second time I went to Davis, the weather was not cooperative. It was wet. It was windy. It was in September. It definitely was living up to the colder than you expect sort of thing. And so, but every other time, like when Magnus and I went out there for fall foliage, or when I went to refilm it, and other times I've stopped, it's always been beautiful. So, yep, Mount Davis, highest point in Pennsylvania, all 3,213 feet of it. Hike 5 miles today. Winter is me. Bill, I'm not good. No comment. I've been a little lazier than I probably should be. So, this past Saturday, I revisited Tom Sock and did the Minus Hawk Trail. How was the falls? Were there falls? That's the fun thing about Minus Hawk is, depending on the time of year, you can either get a very scenic waterfall or you can get a nice view of a bunch of rocks. I don't know. I do not know how many state high points are also national forest high points. I bet you if I looked at a map, I could figure it out. I went to Georgia after the park closed, parked in the lot, and hiked up the steep trail. Had it all to ourselves, but I couldn't go in the building, obviously. Yeah. It is. Breast on Bald is such a weird mountain because you got that huge observatory on top there. And like others have said, for the Georgia Convention Rangers, yeah, if you ask the folks in the museum, they will open the door for high pointers because the actual triangulation disc, is behind. As you walk out of the museum and you look right across that little gap, there's a soda machine and all that, vending machine, and then there's the door, and behind that door is the disc. I had to postpone my winter Mount Washington summit attempt. Home and attempt. Oh, oof! Fighting runner's knee, dude. I remember back in my triathlon days, a long time ago. That was one of the banes of my existence. I feel for you, man. I hope I hope it settles up a little bit and your recovery goes relatively smooth and you can make your summit attempt. Surprisingly, it did have the falls going. That's awesome. The first time I went there, it did have the falls. The second time, it was a dribble. It was not the best. I live in the Monongahela National Forest, and the high point is Spruce Knob. That is correct. I tried to find the Pennsylvania, Maryland, West Virginia Tri-Point. Yeah, so Ron, believe it or not, never the Google Maps wants to take you that way. You actually need to go back up into that little town and go down a road that way and then hike in. So if you're up for it again at some point, let me know. I'd day trip out with you out there to bag that again. You were so close. That's the thing that's really frustrating, is because the map wants to take you a very specific route, but you were so close. So close. I just counted before I counted 15. This guy can find out. I did the same for that tri-point. Need to go to Maryland side, I think, and get directions from there. Yeah, I can. You know what? I think I should take a map shot and see if I can draw it out so you guys can see. I want to say it's Brown Road. You don't make a left-hand turn, or as you're coming down from Pennsylvania to make the turn, you do not make that left-hand turn on a dirt road following a fence line. You actually come down to that town and you're on a hardball road that turns into a Forest Service road. And you keep going a little bit and you will see it opens up and there's power lines and you will see the old marker. As you're driving on the dirt road, you'll see the old marker on the left-hand side. Park your car in that area and then follow the tree line to the right. And it will get you there. And you'll see the house. Like you'll see it is like almost on top of that house that has the marked driveway. It's crazy. So, I know a few before I look, Minnesota and Virginia. Still talking about national forest. Pretzel, here's one for you. How many state high points are in not just national forests, but designated wilderness areas? There's one for you. I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but there's a good question. Hike with Mike. Hello from the swamps of Florida. Glad you're here. David, glad you're here as well. So, so what else have I been doing? Well, I've mentioned it before, but Fearsome Critters has been full on lately. I've been cranking out stories. I've got 5 complete. I need 5 more before I start production. I'll put this to the brain trust. I'm still looking for an animator. So if by some reason you guys are or know somebody that knows how to do like 2D animation, reach out. I need an animator. I want to do something completely different with Fearsome Critters than I've done in the past. And I'll be quite candid. My art capabilities with, any medium besides a camera are, well, to say they're rudimentary is giving me a lot of credit. Let's say my stick figures look rough. So, all right. So, Placo people. Oh, nice. The highest elevation of Florida is actually Britton Hill's more than 314. I think it's 341? Hold on. I used to know this. I should know this. $345 for Britton Hill. 3:45 is your high point, Mike. And you got to go a ways away and look at it from a distance, but it is an actual hill. Are you still shooting for Bora this year? Fingers crossed. I'd like to say yes, but I can't commit right now. If it happens, I'm shooting for August, but I can't firm that plan up right now. Too many other competing priorities in my life. So, it is. I'm trying to figure out, like, most of the more expensive Western peaks for me are on hold. So, trying to figure out, but like I said, if things take a turn, and settle out a little bit and stabilize, then yeah, it could very well get back on track. Did I get doged? No, not yet. But there are other folks in this household. So let's put it this way. Not to get too much into it, but yes, this house did suffer some effects of being doged. So it's bunker down time right now, watching our finances with a lot of diligence. So, more to follow. I know we don't tend to get too political on this live stream. I like to keep this live stream focused on high points. So, or, nature stuff, wilderness stuff, outdoor things. But yeah, it's I'll just say this. I can't commit to spending thousands of dollars to go climb Western peaks right now. So, I will say this though, it is surprising when you actually run the numbers how expensive these things get. Like this is a hobby where even the road trip, let's just say, hey, I was going to run out to Mount Davis, let's say Pennsylvania, and do Mount Davis. I'm going to spend, you drop $100, easy. So the only high point right now that's super close to me, only state high point that's super close to me that I can bag readily and easily, and I actually should do this. I should do a project on this. Is Ebright Azimuth, and the best thing about Ebright Azimuth is if I go to the Total Wine, because there isn't Total Wine in Pennsylvania, but there is one in Claymont, Delaware. And from where I live to the Total Wine in Claymont, Delaware, I gotta drive like literally right by Ebright Azimuth. So when I go on a beer and wine run across the border, I can almost always bag Ebright Azimuth. So, yeah, that's the one high point. Like I can get away with minimal. I can always make a good excuse to go hit Ebright Azimuth. So, Nicholas, hello. I hope you're doing well. I'm sorry that you weren't able to bag Cerro de Punta in Puerto Rico, but the plus side is it's just an excuse to go again. Yes, convenient total wines are very useful. I'm Central Local, so there's a lot of high points I got on the road trip. Honestly, when I lived in Blacksburg, Virginia for the year, it was one of the best locations ever. Because the Southern Six Pack, I was able to, like that was the year I started high pointing, when I was living in Blacksburg, and the wife was at Virginia Tech for a fellowship, and I was just doing my job. But I was able to, like, it was so convenient because you got Mount Rogers just a couple hours down the road. You had Spruce Knob, you had, Hoyt Crest, you had you had Black Mountain, um, all these places. Like, they were just, it was super convenient. Like, Blacksburg sat sort of right in the middle of that southern six pack. And um, it was really um, convenient. Um, what's funny about that, though, is that was after I realized that location was after I started. To answer your question, Pretzel, officially, we're going to play like when I decide I'm going to do these. It's Hoosier Hill, Indiana. But I grew up 30 minutes away from Timms Hill. And I'd been up to Timms Hill numerous times as a kid. Up the tower, the whole works, ran cross country up there. And like, so Timms Hill, all through my childhood, I knew it was the highest point in Wisconsin. And I'd been there and all that. But since it wasn't like I'm going to start this great journey, I don't necessarily count that as my first official one. I suppose I could. Doesn't make it is my most visited. Um, though Delaware right as is quickly zooming like to the front of that list. So, but yeah, Indiana, August 2013, on my way to my 20-year class reunion. Just I was rolling down, what is it, I-70? I think it's I-70. And I saw the sign saying, "Hey, Indiana State High Point." And I was like, "Oh, that's a cool thing as any to stop and see." So, of course, the great irony is, I haven't mentioned this a bunch of times before, but it's always funny. Like, that's not the place you start. Like, take somebody to Hoosier Hill, like, we're gonna go see a state high point, and you go to Hoosier Hill, and you're like, this is it. So, but yeah, I have a fondness in my heart for Hoosier Hill. Um, my there's if I'm exercising some fantastic, like, when Scales Mound, um, the house, I can't think of the name of the people that used to own it. God, they were there forever. But Charles Mound, when that went up for sale, yes, the thought crossed my mind, and the thought has crossed my mind, like, well, maybe when they sell the farm in Indiana, I could buy that high point. Um, so, um, Tim's Hill is a black mark for me, honestly. I took a bad turn down a side mud road thinking it was the way I had to go, and I got stuck for a few years. Oh, that sucks. Um, that sucks. Yeah, it's you can get off the. It doesn't take much to get lost in the northwest of Wisconsin. Yes, Puerto Rico is a beautiful island. I love that place. I'm all in for Puerto Rico. When would you think to do Lam Lam and Lada, Guam and Samoa, respectively? So Guam will happen when Agrahan happens. American Samoa will happen before those two. I'd love to commit to those in 2 years, 3 years. Um, at one point, I was a lot more certain about that. I am certain that I'm going to do them. I feel like I almost feel like some of those peaks, like, these are the story you can trot out every damn time. There's this great bit by Brian Regan. God, it's got to be like 10 years old. He's a comedian. But I feel like doing a place like Lam Lam or Lada or Agrahan is one of these things where um, it's like this bit that Brian Regan talks about how cool would it be as a social fantasy to be one of the 9 astronauts. I think it's 9. maybe 10, whatever the count was, of the people who walked on the moon and how you could literally shut down any conversation with that little factoid of, well, I walked on the moon. And I feel like this would be, in the high pointing community, yeah, the 50 are great, the 49 are great, but the 56, um, I think it adds a little bit more to it. Um, so, but yeah, how much would it cost for Agraham? Tens of thousands. Depends how many people I can assemble. Right now, if I can get a dozen folks, and that would include myself, Brett, and um, if I can convince Eric to go, and maybe Jess uh, to go, I'd need 8 other folks, and then we can bring the cost down. The cost for Agraham, it's going to be expensive to get to Saipan, but you're really putting out a lot of money for the charter, for the boat, and for the logistics, for the supplies, because you're not just going there for a day. Yeah, Eric, you mentioned that before, and I would be glad to have you on board. Um, I would love that. The cost for Agraham is all about you're going to be there for 2 weeks. You're in the middle of nowhere. There is no help coming. So you got to be prepared. Got to have those contingency plans. And it really is almost literally like you're planning an operation, you're planning an expedition. And so there's all the associated costs with having those supplies and getting those supplies to that point and paying for that charter boat. And the more people you have, the lower you can bring the cost down. So I had Mount Washington 4 or 5 times before I was high pointing. Yeah, Connecticut was my second, but first intentional high point. Yeah, Connecticut still is on the list, that short list of tougher than you think. Tougher than you think. But yes, Pretzel, tens of thousands. It's got to be, I think Agraham will be more expensive than, right now I'm predicting it to be more expensive than Denali will be. Ron, that would be awesome. I'd love to have you. I've gotten a few kind of happens. Yeah. I actually, the next time I go home to see my parents at the farm, I really want to pick up the Taylor County High Point, which is my home county, where my parents live. I've looked at it out on the map before, but I've never really. I'd have to actually scope it again and see, who owns the land and all that, and get permission and stuff like that. But yeah, Taylor County. I've done Marathon because that's where mountain. So, all right. Let's see what else. Oh, this is a good chat. Way to go, guys. Um, so, in the meantime, if you haven't checked out Alabama, check it out. Once again, if you can get there, by all means, if you haven't already, it's a cool area. And I would strongly recommend 2 stops. 2 stops. One, check out the mound at Chuckaluk Park, right south of Oxford. That's a cool little park. Nice trail around the lake, and then the mound's there. But they have some really good signage, stuff like that. And then Horseshoe Bend Military Park, about 45 minutes south of Chiha Mountain. Check that out. Really cool historical place, significant historical battle in the United States, in the history of the United States. So it's really, that's definitely worth checking out too. So, and then, yeah, so that's it. So coming up for the rest of March, we'll get back together in 2 weeks when spring is hit. Oh, go find the small airplane crash site too at Chiha. You know, it's funny. I never included that in the story. And that came up the last time too. I never included it. I should have. I always feel like there are things that I write down that never quite make it because I forget the notes. So, good suggestion, Bill. There's also a road to nowhere on Chiaha Mountain that the Corps, Civilian Conservation Corps, was building. That's on Chiaha. So, I don't know the location of that off the top of my head. I will keep you, Pretzel, I will keep you in mind. I will let you know. I will be fully transparent on the cost of that expedition. Most notable high altitude cryptids. I just wrote the story for the Slide Rock Bolter out in Colorado. Hangs off Lizard Head. As Jess will tell you, lover fishy on this chat, one of the hardest 13ers to climb in that state. Maybe one of the hardest 13ers in general. But yeah, Slide Rock Bolter. Now, caveat, of course, if you're going worldwide, the Yeti, is a high altitude cryptid too. But the Slide Rock Bolter is all about hanging from the tops of mountains and using gravity to rush down the sides. So, yeah, I literally just finished that story. Just finished writing it. When I saw it, I was surprised to see how few states have 14ers. Yep. Mothman in West Virginia, absolutely. Jersey Devil here in New Jersey. The Squonk is Pennsylvania's contribution to the whole bit. So, and of course, my home state, Wisconsin, has the Hodag. And when you go up to Timms Hill, if you go further up to Rhinelander, you will see a big statue of the Hodag. It's also the mascot for the Rhinelander High School teams, the Hodag. So, good times. The cryptid stories have been pretty fun to write, and I've mentioned this before, but I'll mention again. It's really fun to be writing in a different style from what I've written for a long time. So it's nice to be flexing those creative muscles. So I really hope that when that series launches, later part of this year is the plan. It all is predicated on getting an animator, though. We need an animator. That you'll like it. That'll be fun. I want it to be fun. So, and if you have kids, it will definitely be safe for them. Like I said, I'm writing these stories to appeal to a wide audience. They are scary. They're not all scary, but some of them are written to be like that classic scary campfire story. So, and that's that. All right, it's 9:13. I think I'm going to wrap it tonight because it's daylight savings time and everybody's probably feeling like crap. So I really want to thank everybody for jumping on board and sticking around. And I appreciate you all. And we'll keep on keeping on. So thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Cheers.